Hello, I'm Claire Duran, and today I'm joined by meteorologist Del Nelson of KRIS TV. And today I'm going to be asking him some questions about meteorology and the weather patterns of South Texas. So the first question is, what is meteorology?
Well, it's a science. It's the science of weather, and that's the short answer. It's the science of weather. And a meteorologist is someone who is more than just a weatherman. A weatherman is somebody, a person that delivers the weather every day for newspaper, radio, TV. That's a weather person. A meteorologist is someone that actually has a college education in the science of weather, which is meteorology.
Okay, what interests you about meteorology?
We talked about this a little off camera before, but what interests me about it is the weather changes from day to day and place to place. And for example, today it was sunny and 71 degrees, beautiful day. Tomorrow the wind's going to be blowing a little bit, the humidity's going to be picking up, and it'll be getting cloudy and warmer. So tomorrow's not going to be exactly the same as today, and to give a forecast exactly the same as today, everybody would realize that you were wrong if that was the case. So it's challenging. Number one, the job is challenging because the weather does change from day to day and place to place. Right now it's raining over in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, but it's clear here. And in some cases, you can have a situation where it might be snowing, say in San Antonio, but just be a cold rain here in the coastal bend or in Corpus Christi.
Okay, and how did you get into this line of work?
I originally went to Rice University, and I was studying atmospheric physics. And I decided after about 2 years that I didn't want to go into that field. Although it was related to meteorology, I didn't see the end point to where it was going to actually get me a job. And so I switched to the University of St. Thomas. I transferred there and got a degree in meteorology. And then ironically, after I graduated, I was actually working for a place in Houston called the Storm Research Center. And I was actually doing research work, which is similar to what I was originally studying for at Rice. And while I was there, my boss was out of town, and there were 2 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, and a guy by the name of Roger O'Neill came by, and I ended up doing the interview with him on why there were 2 storms in the Gulf and what the impact would be on Houston. And the next day I got a call from the executive producer at KPRC in Houston. His name was Ray Miller. And to make a long story short, they gave me an internship. Before that, back then they didn't even have internships, and that man is responsible for getting me my first television job.
Wow. Do you enjoy your job?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't have done it here for 31 years if I didn't enjoy it. Absolutely.
How do you calculate the weather for the future?
Well, this is where your college background comes in, and a lot of it involves math. And a lot of people are turned off by math, but I kind of actually like it. And it involves calculus and differential equations. A lot of that is figured out already for you kind of roughly by computers, but it's always good to go back and fine-tune things because weather is not an exact science. So every day I go through a set of calculations, and that's why I'm real busy from the time I walk in the door to the first newscast. And then there's a little bit of a break at this time in the evening, and then I recalculate everything for the 9 and the 10.
Do the predictions often change?
On a daily basis or on a day-to-day basis?
I guess daily basis.
Well, if I figured everything right the first time, then later in the evening everything just kind of falls into place. But I will not hesitate to make changes in the forecast at night if I feel it's necessary. And one of those things may be, let's say, for instance, tonight I forecasted a low of 49. What if at 9:30 it's already down to 48 degrees and it's still going to drop further? Well, then I need to make some adjustments. So I won't hesitate to do that because I don't like to be just to send people a bad message or a wrong message when it comes to the weather.
What are some well-known weather patterns for the coastal bend?
Well, the predominant southeasterly breeze, I think, is one of the main ones, and that's why the air quality is so excellent in this region. And there is no industry southeast of us, so we have very low air pollution compared to the rest of the country. And I don't think the Chamber of Commerce people focus on that enough. We have very clean air here in South Texas. That's one thing, and our tropical weather pattern is another thing. Along about sometime in May or early June, our rain will come from the east or southeast and move west or northwest. And this time of the year, we're caught up in the southern storm track, and our rain actually comes from the west or northwest and moves east or east-southeast. For instance, last night there was a lot of storms in the Gulf of Mexico. If this would have been June, we would have been looking to get some big-time rain last night and this morning. But because the storm track is out of the west-southwest this time of the year, all that was moving away from us. So those are three dominant weather patterns. The southern jet or southern storm track, the tropical weather pattern, and our prevailing southeasterly breeze, which happens about 8 months out of the year, something like that.
What are some of the effects that can be seen due to weather pattern changes?
Well, weather pattern changes. Well, the main thing is that we tend to go long periods of time here without rainfall. And then when we do get rain, it's usually flooding rain as opposed to just a little bit of rain. It's usually a lot of rain or no rain at all. And so if you go out into the brush country, you can see how dry things are. But the biggest impact we've had on weather changes here is if you take a trip up to Lake Corpus Christi or Choke Canyon and see how low our water supply is. The lack of rainfall in the watershed has resulted in a huge loss of water to where we're down to about 38% of total capacity right now.
Are weather patterns in the coastal bend shifting? If so, what do you think the trend is?
They're definitely shifting, and the trend is towards more extremes. And we've talked about earlier, it seems like we've had hotter highs. In 2012, I might be wrong about this, but it was either 26 or 28 days where the temperature hit 100 degrees. It used to be that we might only hit 100 degrees, back when I started working here in the 1980s, hit 100 degrees maybe once or twice in the summer. And I'm talking about the official temperatures at the airport. And no, not 100 degrees, but I'm talking about record highs. We had 28 record high temperatures last summer,
Wow.
and that is unusual to have so many record highs, and very few record lows. And so that's one of these weather pattern changes, is that we've had a lot of record highs. And then we tend to go long periods of time without rain.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've heard a lot about global warming and climate change. Is there a difference between the two?
The only difference is, well, global warming is a conventional scientific term for the Earth warming up and being above normal temperature-wise compared to the past history of the temperature of the Earth. Climate change is a political term that is applied now that we found out that there was some shenanigans going on with global warming, and so the politicians have now gotten away from that and started calling it climate change instead of global warming. Same thing, but it's just been politicized. A political term has been applied to a scientific term. That's the only difference.
What do you think the coastal bend weather will be like in several decades?
That's hard to say. If you're talking about like 20 or 30 years, or are you talking about 100 years? Or?
Probably, I guess around 20 or 30 or 40.
It's very hard to say. I would be shocked. I mean, I hope that we don't have any hurricane activity. We've had lots of hurricane activity here, but nothing that's been really devastating since Hurricane Celia in 1970, which was 42, almost coming up on 43 years ago. I would be shocked if we went another 20 years without a major hurricane coming here. It could happen, but you heard a lot about hurricanes all over the place, but they seem, fortunately for us, to have missed the area, and I would be shocked if that could continue for 20 or 30 more years.
How long will a pattern stay in effect?
Are you talking about like our southern storm track winter pattern that we're in now, or are you
Right,
talking
or
about
drought, or if it's really hot outside?
Well, the nice thing about living in the northern hemisphere is the tilt of the Earth's axis, and as a result, no matter how hot it is here, how far above normal, it's still going to cool off from August to December. It's going to cool off. Even if we're above normal in December, we're still going to be cooler than it is in August or September. Droughts can last up to 5 years. We're just currently in a dry spell right now. We were about a foot below normal on our rainfall for 2012. 2011, we were 21 inches below normal. So, and actually for 2013, we started out, we're actually above normal. I mean, we have a long, long way to go, but the trend is improving. And in fact, there's large areas of Texas that actually had above normal rainfall not too far from here last year. And I can cite Victoria, all the area between Goliad, Victoria, and Houston, and all the way up into Tyler and East Texas.
It seems that there have been more damaging hurricanes in the Gulf. Is it true that storms are becoming larger, more frequent, and more damaging?
We've had the most active period in history in hurricanes since 1995. The reason, though, that's kind of a tough question. One of the reasons the hurricanes are more damaging is because we have more people living in the path of hurricanes, and as compared to previous years. So, in other words, there's a lot more people that live in the Galveston-Houston area when Ike hit back in 2005, I believe it was, compared to when Carla hit in 1961. Carla was a bigger storm than Ike, but it did less damage because it affected less people because of the time that it happened. There are bigger hurricanes, though, and we've had some of the bigger hurricanes and more frequent hurricanes in recent years, and a lot of that can be due to the fact that the ocean temperature at the time that they occurred was warmer than normal. And hurricanes get their energy from warm, moist tropical water, so it makes sense, the warmer the water, the more energy available to drive them. And we know just on a regular basis that in the Pacific Ocean, where there's more energy than in the Atlantic Basin, which is from here to Africa, the typhoons that happen in the Pacific are bigger than the hurricanes on average that we have in the Atlantic Basin because the water's warmer. So that only makes sense. But most recently would be Hurricane Sandy, and that went up to New York City. They warned, in New Jersey, they warned about a system like this for years, and then it finally happened. The problem is the previous storm they had, which was Irene, which I believe was last year, was supposed to be it was 2011, was supposed to be a devastating storm, and it was absolutely almost nothing. And so now it was a cry wolf situation. A lot of people weren't prepared, and unfortunately there was a tremendous amount of damage and also loss of life.
How should we prepare for a hurricane?
You have to decide whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to leave, and you have to do that in advance. If you're going to stay, you have to have a safe place to stay in. If you don't, you need to leave. If you're going to leave, you need to know where you're going to go, and you need to be able to communicate with people in your family as to where you're going to go and how long you're going to be there. And you might not be able to do that through someone here in Texas. You might have to, if you have a family member outside of the state or outside of the area that's going to be affected by the storm, because when the storm happens, a lot of times the cell phone towers go down and your cell phone won't work anymore, as the people in New Jersey found out with Sandy. If you're going to stay, you need to prepare for several days without electricity and horrific winds, and you need to be in a structure that can withstand that. And you need to have, no matter what kind of structure, you need to have window covers. You have to have window covers, or if something comes barreling through the window and you breach the window and the hurricane gets inside your house, then the chance of the roof coming off the house goes way up. And if the roof comes off the house, the chance of you dying in the house goes way up.
Are there any problems in our coastal bend weather?
What do you mean by problems? I saw that question earlier. What does that mean?
Problems, like does it ever get too hot or too cold for anybody to be outside, or too rainy, flooding?
Well, sure. When you have these weather extremes, like I said, it tends to be, over the top. If you're not in shape, especially in the summertime, or you overexert, or you're in pretty good, even if you're in pretty good shape, and you overexert yourself on a really hot day, you can succumb to heat exhaustion or heat stroke. And if you're in bad shape and you run into those conditions, you can have a heart attack and die. And so, or if you were making a trip somewhere and your car broke down and you were stuck in the heat with no air conditioning for a lengthy period of time and you didn't have any water with you, it could be deadly as well. And the same way with cold weather. We're not used to cold weather or ice or snow. People here, we have accidents all the time when it rains. You can imagine what happens when once every 3 or 4 years when we have ice on the roads. How that's why they shut everything down, because nobody knows how to drive on it, and it's very dangerous to begin with. So there's those type of extremes that can cause problems. And and like I said earlier, when it rains, it pours. It seems like sometimes when it rains, it's really it's a lot. Like in Portland, for instance, where I live, we had on April 16th we had 8.5 inches of rain last year.
Right.
So.
How is our weather beneficial?
Well, how is it beneficial? Well, when it rains, especially here, when it rains, it improves our water supply. This time of the year, like a day like today, you don't need the heat, you don't need the air conditioning. It's, it can be, and when other parts of the country go days and days and days with cloudy skies, it tends to depress people. Here we tend to have quite a bit of sunshine, which is uplifting. So in that way, I guess it makes people feel good and is beneficial. I'm trying to think. That's about all I have to say about that.
What do you do to keep track of the patterns?
Keep weather records. So.
What kind of patterns have the biggest effect?
Biggest effect on
our city or Portland?
Type of weather patterns?
Right.
Well, I think we kind of touched on that before. It's the prevailing southeasterly breeze, the tropical pattern, which sets up here in May and lasts until September, October, and then the southern storm track, which can bring beneficial rain this time of the year, which is what's going on right now. And that's what gave us that rain yesterday.
Right. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, and I think we learned a lot.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad I hope it works out, and I hope you get a good grade from your teacher on this.
Thank you.